So finally, Luna 4 is over. We got a lot of great lore from the Archon quest and even Lantern Raid itself as we finally learned the identity of the Welkin Moon, the Welkin Moon Lady if you pay $5 of your life, Boreas and Koitar, the 3 Moon Sisters, and even some secrets of the Moon Wheel which I will make a video on very soon. However, there is one more lore that is so bizarre that we need to talk about, and that is the Wings of the Silent Moon, where it's basically a huge lore bomb on the previous CRYO Archon Belyi Tsar and the third descender Saarelainen. No one really talk about this wing and I can understand why. The lore is quite obscure, and even though I said it's a lore about Belyi Tsar and Saarelainen, it's possible that I could be very wrong about it being the case. Regardless, in today's video, we will explore the Wings lore and we'll talk more about Belyi Tsar's lore based on what we learned from all of the readables that we got so far. As always, don't forget to give this video a like and comment so the channel can be noticed by the algorithm. My name is Neko Kitsune and I make lore and commentary videos on this channel to keep you company. But before that, let's pay some bills. Now that Farka is out, it's not surprising if a lot of people want to pull for the man. I mean, look at him. Huge muscles, manly face. Previous men could never, except for Ohitam. I love this man to death. Of course, for one to get a Farka, one must surrender their possession to the Farka. And that's why Lootbar is here to help you with that. Lootbar has been a long-time partner of this channel now, and that's because I use it myself. They provide cheaper crystals compared to in-game prices, supports consoles, supports melee Astro Wonderland, and they have packages that guarantee you to get characters you want. All you need is to enter your UID, no personal information required, and your items will arrive quickly. Over 36,000 Trustpilot reviews are showing their satisfaction after using Lootbar, and their customer service is always available if you need assistance. Aside from Genshin Impact, other popular games are included in Lootbar as well, including the newly added Arknights Anfield. Click the link in the description below and register to get an additional 10% coupon that can be combined with all of the discounts and receive special discounts for returning customers. Now let's continue with the content. Before we get to the Wings lore, let's start with who Belyi Tsar is. Thankfully, we got a pretty solid book talking about the Snowland Face history, and it's basically an interesting tale of what happened in Snezhnyi, presumably during the Archon War. Belyi Tsar, or his real name as Monomakh Snezhnyi, was the first CRYO Archon of Snezhnyi before he fell during the Cataclysm. Implied influences signature weapon called Blood-Soaked Ruins, Monomakh has a brother named King of Summer Oak, to which he accidentally killed after a quarrel. It was after that incident that Snezhnyi turned into a wintry land that we now see today, caused by his own grief. As implied in the book of A Brief History of Pale Starborn, Monomakh already became a ruler of an imperial city in Snezhnyi called Kitesh. Monomakh's domain is also referred to as the Pale Star Court, which explains why the operation in capturing Columbina is called the Pale Star Edict, because Pale Star in its own is the highest order from Snezhnyi's ruler. Anyways, after Monomakh killed his own brother, he visited Hyperborea for unknown reasons. It was after this visit that he finally opened his palace gates to humanity. Since then, Monomakh created a new city in Snezhnyi called Snezhnograd, a place where both humans and Fays lived together in harmony, and he moved his rulership there. He also created the Drushna, basically the Knights of Avonius and Millelith equivalents in Snezhnyi. However, to say Snezhnyans lived in peace or not, it's very far from that. During this time, Monomakh offered people from a place called Villa to sever their ties with King Mstislav because of his bullshit taxes, and they agreed to do just that. Mstislav, of course, did not take kindly to this as he accused Monomakh for breaking the peace agreement. So he declared a war and Monomakh finally took the title of himself as Belyi Tsar. To say it's a fantastical and less gruesome than the previous wars we know of in this game is a bit of an understatement because the description in that book is very gruesome. I won't go into too much detail on that one because the whole thing is very demonetizable and we don't want that. However, just know that Monomakh seems to be a polearm user as he killed his enemies by throwing his spear to them. Regardless, the battle takes place in Kitesh and Mstislav sent his armies and alliance there 3 times. One thing to note, however, is that Mstislav attempted to defeat Monomakh using the power of the Shadow Realm, which is very likely refers to the power of the Abyss. This attempt was so effective that it also backfired on Mstislav himself and affected Monomakh's decision in the war later on. Now, the book never really talks about the details of it, but we are hinted that there will be another book about this to be released somewhere in the future. Long story short, Monomakh won the war and Mstislav was slain along with his peers. One of them, however, named Tsareviki from Sirnareka, was pardoned by Monomakh and since then joined his force with an honor of longsword tap by Monomakh personally. Also, this man is implied to be a furry, so we might get a playable furry in Snezhnyi. Who knows? I just have to share that with the class. That said, considering Sirnareka is a city of wolves, it's possible that this is Boreas' original home before he met Koitar. That's just a small speculation for now, but I won't go too deep on that one. To say that Monomakh immediately became the Archon or not, it doesn't seem to be that way. However, after the war ended, Monomakh declared himself as Lord of all Fays, but to say Monomakh is also a Fae is still up to debate. I can't say much on this either because even the book is not clear on that, and according to Flintz's Character 5 story, the Fays wept for Monomakh's passing, wishing that Monomakh could have an immortal life like them. This implies that Monomakh could be a different type of race, but we'll talk about this in a bit. That said, it's possible that Monomakh is Pakaisuko in the Hymns of the Far North, and also the Lord of all Fays being mentioned in the Wings of the Silent Moon. Speaking of that, this is where we enter that portion of the story. Mind you, the whole thing in this section is still very unclear on who is who, and there are two versions that I come up with considering the two are extremely similar to each other. So take everything I said in this section with a very huge grain of salt. Let's go with the first version, Saarelainen's version. One day, a traveler from afar visited his island and eventually made its way to the royal court of Zapolyarny Palace to propose to, presumably, Anastasia, who is now known as the Tsaritsa. I say presumably because it doesn't seem she is Monomakh's daughter considering her middle name is Fyodorovna, meaning the daughter of Fyodor. This is also a case where I find there might be two kings of Fays, but let's just assume that Monomakh is Anastasia's father. Anyways, this traveler is soon to be revealed as the third descender known as Saarelainen in the Hymns of the Far North. He is said to be an innocent and carefree young man who finds Anastasia to be a peerless and unmatched beauty. Monomakh, of course, would agree to let Saarelainen propose to his daughter on one condition: opening the gates of Pahola. Whether Pahola is the Abyss or not, I have no idea, and I won't dare to say it's the Abyss for this video's context, so we'll continue to refer to this place as Pahola. In that book, it is said that Saarelainen went there alone, but it is implied that at least both of them went there. That's what we know so far, but the Wings later reveal more lore about this. Monomakh's reason for sending Saarelainen to go there was to defeat his greatest enemy and indeed to open the gates to Pahola. Monomakh's greatest enemy is said to be immortal and does not age, and no matter how many times Monomakh struck him down, this entity would soon rise again from the shadows. Eventually, Monomakh found a way to defeat this enemy once and for all, and that is to shatter its egg that is said to be at the deepest and darkest part of the Earth's strata, which in this case could be related to Pahola. Even though Pahola is implied to be the Abyss, it might be related to the Irminsul because Pahola is implied to be a place with two double gates inside a raven's belly on top of the reversed Irminsul tree and another gate inside of the white hare's eye. If it can't be any more specific than that, then I don't know what else to say. Now, shattering the egg is easy enough, and opening the gate seems to have been solved by Saarelainen. The problem right now is how to cross the realm, and with that, the two crafted the Wings of the Silent Moon for Monomakh to cross using the power of the moon, which is safe to assume that it's using the power of Kuvaki instead the power of the three moon goddesses. The ending of this story is very obscure because there are many versions of this. That said, I think all of them could be related in some way, and contradictory to what the wing said, yes, the ending matters game. Anyways, there's two known versions of the ending. First ending revealed the moment Monomakh shattered the egg, the entity is revealed to wear the same face and figure as him. Another ending said Monomakh is trapped inside Pahola, and that realm was meant to keep him there from the start. Either way, Monomakh's ending in this story is very unclear, and there's a chance that the Snow King in this story is not Monomakh either, because of how weird the timeline is. Regardless, after that story, Monomakh's story continues where he meets Rauthvangi, who is not a pure-blooded Kyrian and is said to have originally dwelt from somewhere else, likely either Sumeru or Fontaine. Speaking of him, the second version of this story could be with Rauthvangi instead of Saarelainen. Even though this video will heavily emphasize on Saarelainen's version, I have to tell you Rauthvangi's version as well and let you decide in the comments which one you think makes the most sense. For a brief reminder, Rauthvangi is mentioned in the Night of the Skies Unveiling artifact set, basically the best in slot for most moon sign DPS characters. The story behind it is a researcher from Kyria that is obsessed with the power of the Abyss after he witnessed the Sign of Abausha, or what Barbalot refers to as the Sign of Truth when she pranked Mon. Yes, that whole quest is actually relevant here, and let me double down on that. So basically, Barbalot states that Kyria have certain lakes that allows them to see the real stars outside of the false sky. In order to see the entire fate of Teyvat, one must be able to obtain the cosmic parameters that is the real sky from the false firmament. It's also the reason why the Sign of Abausha can be referred to as the Sign of Truth as well, because it's basically just that. Now the problem with this is it also connects itself with the Abyss, and while Mona didn't necessarily fail and still managed to open the gate, it's only for a brief moment to lure abyssal monsters in. The answer to this is actually quite simple. Mona basically forces herself to break through the firmament by physical means, where according to Barbaloth, using non-physical means is more likely to succeed. The main point of that whole quest is to tell you how the Sign of Abausha works, and we do see the impact of it in Caverna of Good and Evil, where it basically affected the entirety of Girdle of the Sands until we purified it. Back to Rauthvangi again, he basically saw the Sign of Abausha during his youth, and ever since then, he is obsessed with the power of the Abyss. Rauthvangi is not a pure-blooded Kyrian, and with how the artifact set tells his story, it's possible that Rauthvangi used to be a scholar from Sumeru. Regardless, he continued to conduct more research of his in the underground nation of Kyria. With what Barbalot told us, it's possible that Rauthvangi opened the Sign of Abausha multiple times using the Kyrian lakes, but there's one problem here. Conducting research beyond the firmament is forbidden in Kyria and is considered as a taboo. Only those who are close to Ermin are allowed to do that, and as a result, Rauthvangi's punishment is an exile. Since Rauthvangi is not a pure-blooded Kyrian, his punishment is basically the curse of wilderness. However, as he exits the nation, he is completely unaffected by the curse, which could imply that he was already too affected or already abusing the power of the Abyss for his own gain. Now this is where the Wings' story takes place. Since we can agree in this video that the Snow King mentioned is Monomakh, it's possible the traveler being referred to in this matter is Rauthvangi, since he is not a Snezhnyi either. The Wings description also matches Rauthvangi perfectly, since he is a traveler outside of the palace's gate. If that's the case, then the events in the Wings of the Silent Moon takes place around 500 years ago. Monomakh is already obsessed with trying to utilize the borderlands of Snezhnyi, that is now known as Nordkrai, into good use. It is also implied that because of Rauthvangi's influence, Monomakh is planning to rebel against the heavenly principles and sent Rauthvangi to Nordkrai in order to find power that is similar to that. Of course, Rauthvangi did not follow Monomakh's order, but he indeed tried to open and tore the false sky in order for the Abyss to completely engulf Teyvat. There's no justification with Rauthvangi, he is as insane as he can get. Of course, his deeds were dead stopped by Alia, Ayla, and Solofe, and the rest of the story is what we experienced during Iluwa's world quest. Since the timeline is around the time of the Cataclysm, this meant the gate from the false sky should also be opened where the abyssal monster starts to invade Teyvat. Now, Monomakh died during the calamity, but whether he died in CRYO or not was never stated directly. That said, however, we can assume that Monomakh managed to enter the Sage Realm inside the White Hare's Eye and encounter that egg. Remember, even though the sinners are responsible for the Cataclysm, Rauthvangi still played a role in this matter as he tried to open the false sky. If this is indeed what happens, then the ending of Wings of the Silent Moon could possibly take place somewhere else. Monomakh sees his enemy and that entity is now taking shape into Monomakh's figure and face. While Monomakh is considered dead by the people, it seems he is not quote-unquote dead just yet, but trapped inside that space until today. So that's the entire story of Monomakh, also known as Belyi Tsar, and that's the two versions I can think of regarding the story of the Wings of the Silent Moon. Whatever happens to him, his story is quite straightforward. TLDR, he rose the imperial city of Kitesh and Snezhnyi. He is the king of all Fae, the Faes worshipped him, he met Saarelainen and indirectly contributed to his death, he worked together with Rauthvangi and died during the Cataclysm. After all that, Anastasia Fyodorovna ascended as the new ruler of Snezhnyi and was declared as the Tsaritsa. Under her command, she disbanded the Drushna and created a new force called the Fatui. At the same time, she created a fortress called Glupov to strengthen the Fatui, and just like the Fatui's name, Glupov meant the City of Fools. The Fae nobilities no longer live in peace as their prestige and royalty are revoked. Some still retain their princely titles, but only as honorary aristocracy, while a lot of them were immediately executed. The Faes lost their golden age, some left to another city called Novokiteshgrad, while there are others who still live in Snezhnyi, albeit not many. Snezhnyi's political government was then replaced by a human where Mage J of the Hexen Circle, also known as Joanna Ivanovna, became the first mayor of Snezhnyi. There were also cases like Flynn's who left Snezhnyi for good into Notcry and became the Lightkeepers, and as per Ilua, Aino, and Inafa, Linnea is also a Fae that now works for the Adventurers Guild. Now that you know the entire story, let's get into the theory section. Of course, now that you have come this far, it's good to assume that you enjoyed this video, which is always a pleasant feeling for me that I managed to keep you company. That said, my goal this year is to reach 100,000 subscribers, and if you can hit the like and subscribe button, you're helping this channel a lot more than you might have thought. With that said, let's continue. Now I can only get to one theory here because, well, the previous parts of the video is already theory in itself. However, I think one thing that we can agree on is the ambiguity of Monomakh's enemy. Their identity is very unclear other than they're immortal, can't age, and are apparently within the depths of Pahola in the form of an egg. One person we can think of is Rauthvangi because he has the ability to be reborn. However, Monomakh did not kill Rauthvangi personally, and he was killed by someone else, that being Ayla, Alia, and Solofe. Besides, like what I just told you, Rauthvangi resembles more to the traveler mentioned in that story. So, what is the egg's identity? Aside from Rauthvangi, who was also referred to as Calamity Egg, another entity that is said to be born from an egg is the Heavenly Principles. For a brief reminder, the Heavenly Principles were born from an egg when they descended to Teyvat. That egg soon became the false sky created by the angels, and since then continuously faced with many obstacles from the War of the Funerary Year, the Archon War, and of course, the Cataclysm. Now let's backtrack a bit because the identity of the Heavenly Principles is still strange in so many ways. You guys should already be aware by now of the theory that the Heavenly Principles is an AI of the Traveler's spaceship. I won't deny the theory is quite strong, and we all can agree that it is the most plausible answer right now. At the same time, however, I feel like there's a part of me that finds this a little bit unlikely. Not necessarily because there's holes, but more so It feels too obvious of an answer, if that makes sense. If it is the spaceship's AI, does that mean it ejects itself from the spaceship by a pot? It would make sense because the false sky is techish when it comes to its team, and the traveler came from an extremely advanced planet. The Heavenly Principles won against Nibelung during the funerary year, but they lost most of their functions and were laid to rest. Now here's where I'd like to propose a theory. As we already know, Saarelainen is the third descender and was soon killed by the Heavenly Principles the moment he entered Pohjola. According to New Villet's vision story, the Heavenly Principles and the one who came after created the Gnosis together, which now comes to the story in the Wings again. If we combine New Villet's vision story, Hymns of the Far North, and Wings of the Silent Moon, the theory goes like this. After the War of the Funerary Year, the Heavenly Principles is presumably on a slumber, like what they are doing right now. That place seems to be Pohjola, a place that is inside 3 different gates that include the Irminsul Tree, a Raven's Belly, and a Hare's Eyes. Monomakh tasks Saarelainen to visit Pohjola, but the moment he opened the gate and entered said place, he was then murdered by the Heavenly Principles. Since the Wings' story implies that Monomakh also visited the place, then it's possible the one who came after is very likely to be Monomakh himself, because Monomakh came after Saarelainen. It's worth noting that Monomakh was not implied to have died, but rather 2 of the known possibilities. The egg bore his face, or he was imprisoned. For a very, very long time, I always refer to the Heavenly Principles as he in this channel, and that's because Piero referred to them as he in the God's Limits trailer.
The god stays silent, as if the thought had never once crossed his mind.
However, the game continues referring to the Heavenly Principles as they, which includes the 3 moon goddesses, and it is good to assume that the Heavenly Principles is literally androgynous since they were described that way in the Before Sun and Moon. Now that we have this wing, and assuming the story behind it is about the Heavenly Principles, Monomakh, and Saarelainen, then it makes sense why Piero refers to the Heavenly Principles as he, because right now, the Heavenly Principles is using Monomakh's figure. Now that I think about it, maybe this is the reason why the Tsaritsa was the most affected after the events of the Cataclysm, because there are 2 certain possibilities. Number 1, the Heavenly Principles created a deal with the CRYO Archon. One thing I find interesting here is how the Heavenly Principles worked together with Monomakh to create the Gnosis. This could mean everything that happened during Monomakh's civil war happened after his meeting with the Heavenly Principles, and it's possible that creating the Gnosis is one way for both of them to create and maintain the Order of Teyvat. Of course, this happened way before Monomakh was implied to rebel against the Heavenly Principles, because this idea rose to him the moment he met Rauthvangi. I say imply here, and I'll explain why in a bit. It's unclear why Monomakh even wanted to rebel in the first place other than Rauthvangi as the trigger. All we know is that Monomakh deemed Rauthvangi as his partner, considering he is interested in Rauthvangi's knowledge in astronomy, something that we know is crucial to Teyvat's fate. Like what Barbalot said, the only way to know the entire fate of this world is by seeing the true stars beyond the false sky, which I would assume that Monomakh saw what Rauthvangi showed him by opening the sign of a Bausha. However, here's another issue that I would like to address. Why did Monomakh even want to open the gates to Pohjola anyway? Is the Heavenly Principles really his enemy? And if so, does that mean he initially wants to rebel in the first place prior to meeting Rauthvangi? The answer to that is potentially yes. So you see, if the Wings refer to the Snow King as Monomakh, then he is indeed a Fae from the very beginning. We learn from the finale of the Deep Galleries that the Faes are created using the power of the Frost Moon's lights and forged upon the giant beasts, which is the same exact description as to what the Wings said, where the Snow King was born from a great beast. The Fae's existence are quite simple. They are made in order to create a perfect being that could merge with Teyvat, and also in order to free humanity from the shackles of the Heavenly Principles. If Monomakh is indeed made in order to continue Koitak's ideals, then dealing with the Heavenly Principles makes sense because Koitak initially wanted to rebel to begin with. Meeting the Heavenly Principles might be a way for the two entities to finally create a peace treaty per se. The Heavenly Principles killed Saarelainen. Meeting Monomakh meant they offered something to him, but in return, the Heavenly Principles used Monomakh's face, which now comes to an even bolder speculation. Are you ready? Number 2. The Heavenly Principles' double life. The reason I have this idea is because of the Wings' potential ending, where it says that Monomakh's enemy wears the same face as him and the realm is made to imprison him anyway. Right now my guess is that Monomakh is not dead. At least not yet, but rather contained within a different space that is likely to be the Pahola. But even being contained in such place, that doesn't mean he is laid dormant either, and my guess right now is something that is similar to Nabirius' current state. Right now, Nabirius is stripped away from her role as the ruler of life because Rhindaughter devoured her heart. But even without that, she is still able to voice her concern and disapproval as we saw during the God's Limits trailer. So what if the concept is the same here? The Shades are basically parts of the Heavenly Principles, so if they can control a certain role, then it would make sense for the Heavenly Principles to share the same thing. Besides, if the Heavenly Principles is an AI that can recreate Teyvat's lands and life, then what makes them unable to control one of their creations? Even though they didn't create the face, their creation made them. Therefore, it is still one of their creations by association. If that's the case, then it's possible that the Heavenly Principles was not completely dormant, but was inside Monomakh's body. Considering the Heavenly Principles embody the power of reason, it would make sense for them to not be noticed by others and just do whatever they need to do anyway. The moment the Cataclysm came, they used Monomakh's body to finally show themselves and then cursed everyone. It would make sense why the CRYO was so disappointed and heartbroken in the first place, because the Heavenly Principles used Monomakh's body to pursue their plans. It could also be the reason why the CRYO severely weakens the Face's political strength, because at the end of the day, the Heavenly Principles played a part in creating that matter. Man, if this theory ends up being true, the theme of CRYO being an irony just plays so much more in this matter. The God of Love is no longer the embodiment of love, and Monomakh, who wanted to rebel against the Heavenly Principles in the first place, has to fuse with the very entity that he tries to kill anyway. But again, that's just how I see it. Besides, this entire theory could easily be debunked because it's implied that Monomakh is not a Fae. However, if he is a Fae, then that immortality was probably taken away from him by the Heavenly Principles. One thing that I find odd is the CRYO's reason for weakening the Snowland Face's nobility and government, because the Fae government doesn't seem to be that bad. In fact, Monomakh accepted both humans and Fae together in his court. So why? Well, you'll have to wait until we get more lore about the CRYO, because this is where our video has to end. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next one. Jana!